Hi, this is Robert Kiyosaki, and you're listening to Capital Hacking. This is the most important thing you can listen to today.
Here's the one.
I have a dream.
With great power comes great responsibility.
I could do this all day.
This is it. Don't get scared now.
They may take our lives, but they'll never take our freedom.
Cinderella story out of nowhere.
It's in the hole. That the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
Capital Hacking begins in 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back to the big show. Josh McCown here with the illustrious John Edwin. Thank you for doing this with us.
Josh, as always, every show is super fun. Today we interviewed Adrian Accay, just an awesome guy. Him and I crossed paths multiple times. Didn't actually know each other when we were crossing paths, training out of the same, facility, Datis MMA, which was a staple in Philly for many, many years. But just an incredible story.
Yeah, and today's story goes from entrepreneurship to you and I dig in with Mark Zuckerberg, the famous Meta guy, and Rogan, and we get into the world of mixed martial arts and why people care about functional medicine and physical activity like that. And then we end with the secret sauce of functional medicine. And I think we, through Adrian's eyes, I feel like a lot of clarity has come to me on why so many people are talking about it.
Yeah, let's go.
John, we did it. We got Adrian on the big show. Thank you for wrangling this dynamo, multi-business owner.
Well, Adrian and I talk every now and again, and I've been harassing him to get on the big show, and he said, yeah, let's go. Let's pull the trigger. So Adrian Accay, welcome to Capital Hacking. Can you give our listeners a little background of who you are?
Yeah, I appreciate it, John, Josh. I love you, John. I'm looking forward to hanging out with you this weekend. So a little bit about myself. Born and raised in South Philadelphia, and I am married 16 years, 2 children, 8 and 10, boy and a girl. They're rock stars. 4 years ago, we made the move that everyone wants to make to Florida. So we came to Boca Raton, Florida. It's beautiful here, even right now, and we're in the middle of winter. I know it's cold up north, but it's amazing down here. Went to school for undergrad, was at St. Joe's, did chemistry, and then I went into transitioned into pharmacy. I have a doctor of pharmacy. And I built a chain of hospital pharmacies or federally qualified health center pharmacies, and I stepped away from that. I also invest in real estate, been doing that since 2009, and now my current business is functional medicine. So I'm a functional medicine practitioner, went back to school for that, got certified, and I love it. I get to help people kind of live the best life they can avoid getting sick by doing the right things, and I'm truly passionate about it. I live my life that way. I try to lead everyone I talk to that way, my family that way, and influence everyone around me. John and I actually go back because we're both in the mixed martial arts world. I'm a black belt in jiu-jitsu. He's a Muay Thai expert. So we've crossed paths. We know a lot of the similar people in the Philly world. And so, that's our connection there.
All right, well, then we're going to jump right into that, John. How about the Zuckerberg interview on Rogan? Did you guys see this the other day?
I didn't see it. Fill us in. There's been
Yeah,
so
I did
many
not.
things happening lately in the world.
So, Zuckerberg did this whole turnaround where he's all into free speech, as you guys know. I don't know if you know that. He said, we're changing our policies and this and that. He's on Rogan, and Rogan's like, you're a better guy now. And he goes, thanks, because of your work with MMA. And, he just put, what's the gentleman who runs UFC?
Dana White.
Yeah, Dana White just joined Meta. Did you know that?
Nice.
The board of directors. Okay, so I'm ahead of you guys.
Way
Pop
ahead.
culture. So Dana White joins Facebook. So this is like I'll call it the tough guy version of Mark Zuckerberg. And Rogan's like complimenting him, and he goes, you know why you're a better guy is because you've been training MMA for 4 or 5 years or something crazy. And Zuckerberg and him like geek out about all this, incredible martial arts and how it has an impact. And Zuckerberg describes how he even went and did a competition, shows up at a fight, and somebody's like, I think that's Zuckerberg. And he's fighting a guy at whatever you would call that, kind of like a, expo or whatever demo. So anyway, so you guys don't know this, but my point in the show was, I have to admit, it was very interesting to hear Rogan and Zuckerberg talk about the powerful influence on their lives of doing that type of training. And all I could think about was guys like you, and so you guys are like, I would say, at the pinnacle of society right now. You got everybody talking about the work you guys do.
Well, I mean, for me, I got into it because I've always been an athlete and competitive, and my cousin was actually like, "Hey, you got to try out this Muay Thai," and I'm like, "What is that?" He's like, "Oh, this guy, Crew Rigel, is like the man in the United States, and it's right in South Philly, and we're above a machine shop, and show up, and it's dark in there, it's hot, like it's straight out of Fight Club, like."
Yeah.
Like I'm walking in and I'm like, dude, this is crazy. This is legal. Like people are doing this, and it was right in my wheelhouse. So I jumped right in and ate it up. Adrian, were you there when we were above that machine shop on Carpenter Street?
I don't know. I joined Dadis, which Rigel trained a bunch of guys that used to go to Dadis.
Well, that was Dadis.
That was that. Okay, so yes, I did go there.
We moved into that Washington Avenue.
Yep. I was before they moved to Washington Avenue.
Okay, so
I was
there,
at the Carpenter
Street. Know each other. And this is, by the way, this is 17 years ago.
Oh yeah. So to touch on what you're saying, Josh, it's very humbling, right? Like you go in there and you think you're tough. And I joined for a different reason. I grew up in South Philly. Like in South Philly, if you weren't fighting, you were dust. Like there's no way you're going to survive. You have to fight. I've probably been in over 150 fights just from being a kid all the way to growing up. It was like every week you're fighting. So it was a natural progression to either learn how to box or do Muay Thai or something like that. And but when you join one of these gyms, and I'm a black belt under Phil and Ricardo Miglioris, and they're at Balance Studios, and everyone knows these guys in Philly, right? So they're rock stars. These guys are incredible beings, and they're incredible jiu-jitsu practitioners, and they have Muay Thai, and they've done so many things for the community in Philly. But that being said, you think you're tough, and then you go and join one of these gyms, whether it's Muay Thai or jiu-jitsu, and you get the shit kicked out of you.
Wow.
And then you're like, what the hell do I have to do? So there's either you break, or you're like, I'm going to become this guy. I'm going to push through and become that next. And that shows a lot about their character, right? Like even in business, there's the people who do it, they fail, and they give up. And there's the ones that are like, hey, what am I going to do to get better? And I keep coming back.
Yeah. Before we break from this topic, because the next question is, so UFC and all of that growth, it feels like it corresponds to the same time you guys were growing in this type of fighting. Honestly, it just sprung on the scene at that point though, right? Like I don't remember this in the 90s.
Oh, it was.
It was
was
already there.
It was there.
I was watching UFC 1. I remember that because they had no weight classes and they had no rounds and there was no time.
Mm-hmm.
So it was so crazy. This is before Dana White. And that's where Royce Gracie hit the scene, and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu went crazy because this guy, I don't know what he weighed, 150, 160 pounds, was taking on these 200 plus, 300 plus pound men that they were not like wimpy guys. They were like legit fighters.
Big
and he
dudes.
would choke them out. Like, and everybody was like, holy crap, can anybody beat this skinny Brazilian guy?
Right. Yeah. So it's funny. I have a friend of mine who in '93, I believe. So Phil was at UFC 1. He was by Royce's side, and he was training at the Gracie Academy in California. And so I was against jiu-jitsu. I was a stand-up guy. I'm like, box or Muay Thai or this. Nobody's taking me to the ground. And then I met Rick, and Rick took you down like this. And then you feel like a child when Rick grabs you. I mean, he is a specimen of a human. And at that point, I realized like this is legit stuff. And so I started training in 2009 under them. But before that, when you're in this scene, the MMA scene, all about UFC. Like you've been following this from inception. So I used to buy the DVDs when Blockbuster was around and Hollywood Video and get the old ones and watch them.
Wow.
So.
Yeah, and then the last thing I have to ask, because again, you guys all know this stuff. Steven Seagal, the actor.
Yeah.
Is he legit or what? Like, I'm watching some like documentaries on the guy. It looks like he's a stone cold killer. Like, is that like part of all of this, or is that a whole different genre
I'm going to
of
leave
martial?
that in Adrian's court now.
So I don't know him personally, but I know he has coached some rock star fighters,
Yeah.
including Anderson Silva, Lyoto Machida. So he is a true martial artist, and he is legit, Now, how he would do in an MMA caged match is a very different story, right? Because each MMA is a mix of everything. You
Right.
can't be like in '93, if you were a great jiu-jitsu fighter, you could get away with winning a UFC. You could win the whole match or whatever. You can win as many matches. But nowadays, that's just one prerequisite to get into the cage, right? So if you're good at jiu-jitsu, that's one thing, but you got to be good at everything. You have to be a good wrestler. You have to be good at jiu-jitsu. You have to be a great Muay Thai guy. You got to be good at boxing. You have to be an overall good fighter in every aspect to be able to win. So yes, he is a martial artist. He's a legit martial artist. He's coached some top name people, but he's not an MMA fighter.
All right. Sorry for going down that pigeonhole, but I'll tell you what, man, this is one of the best shows because Adrian, you're living the apex functional health. I think we're going to end with that category of your life because now we got to jump backwards. Here you are graduating. I think you said a PhD or a doctorate in pharmacy, but I can't quite put the date on when that is going on with all your martial arts training. But why did you jump into entrepreneurship instead of just going working for a major corporation?
Yes.
Go ahead. Tell us about that story.
So that's a great question. So it's a doctor of pharmacy, and I came out and I was working as a clinical pharmacist my first year, and I didn't like, being bound to those rules, right? And so I decided to go down. I was moonlighting at like a Rite Aid on weekends just to make extra cash. And so after a year of being a clinical pharmacist, I stepped into the business world on the retail side. And as I was doing it, I was like, you know what, this is such a grind and I could do this on my own. And my biggest thing wasn't money. For me, it was freedom. Everybody has the one thing that really pushes them. And for me, it was like, I want my freedom. And I never had my freedom. I spent, college, my youth is studying hard. Then I went to college, then I went to grad school. Everything has been work. I was like, how do I get freedom so I could do the things I want to do? And so I'm like, you know what? I reached out to a friend of mine who had his own pharmacy, and he was like, oh yeah, I make all this money and I don't work. And I was like, geez, this is what I got to do. I need to do this. And so I decided to jump ship and build out my own. And it was very risky and it was very scary and I didn't know anything, but I knew one thing. I know that whatever I do, I don't give up. Right, John? Like we talked about, like in the martial arts world, the MMA world, like you're just going to keep coming back. Yeah. And so I knew that I had that. So I was going to figure out whatever happens. And I was married at that time. So I had a conversation with my wife, and my wife is extremely supportive. And she was just like, well, who cares? If it doesn't work out, you just go back to work. Like, big deal. And she made it so simple. And I was like, yeah, F it, why not? And so I jumped ship, and then it took off. We did great things. I took my experiences working in the hospital setting, applied it to the retail setting, transitioned into a 340B, which is a specialty where we have contracts. And then from that point, what ended up happening is it's a sad world when you're in conventional medicine, because people are constantly taking meds. And I started realizing, man, there's so many different ways to avoid people from getting sick. But the jiu-jitsu thing was really just a stress reliever. Like, I'm going through this hard grind of building a business and working, no lie, I was working probably 100 hours a week for years, no days off. And I would take off like from 12 noon every 3 days a week to go train jiu-jitsu as a stress reliever. But I did it for so long that I just kept growing in the ranks. Right. And so from that point, I realized, like, man, my true passion, I started realizing, is preventing people from getting sick. I was watching patients of mine, and I had close relationships with these people that were passing away. And it's so sad when that happens. And so I was like, what could I have done better? Like, we're getting them their meds, they're taking their meds, they're not changing anything in their lives.
That's incredible. Dude, I love that. That is so then you went to school for functional medicine. Is that the next step that you went to for the passion?
Yeah. So what ended up happening is I started reading all these books and I'm learning all this stuff. And I started kind of like helping people get better, and I got sick. I got really sick in 2019. I had no idea what was going on. So it started off with me wanting to help myself. And I'm reading. I probably read over like 50 books on like natural health and functional medicine and stuff. And then I realized that I could pass this knowledge on. So I start passing this knowledge on to my clients and my patients at work and then friends, right? And then from that point, I stepped into like, I had so many people that I was helping for free. And I was like, okay, I really should go back to school and figure out where the gaps are in what I'm doing, right? Because I'm sure there's more to this than what I just know. And even though I was helping them and it was changing their lives, I just wanted to feel, I come up from the traditional schooling method that if you don't have a degree, you don't have a certification, you're not legit, right?
Yeah.
So I go back to school and I get certified as a functional medicine, and I fill in all the gaps with the functional medicine lab testing and understanding exactly the road that they need to take to get to the outcome that I want them to get to. Instead of just one-offs, it became like a roadmap. And at that point, I was like, that was the birth of like Apex Functional Health. And I was like, all right, here we go.
May I ask, so as we wrap up this conversation about right choice for a minute, and then I really want to ask you about Apex for a second. So right choice is still operational. How many deployments of right choice, which is the pharmacy that's inside hospitals? Is that what
Yeah, they're
do?
health centers, federally qualified health centers in Philadelphia.
And are they in a medical facility? Is that the
Yes.
secret
Yeah,
sauce?
that's the secret sauce. They have to be qualified. So you have to register through a company, through the federal government, through HRSA. And if they meet the requirement, then we go in and we basically run their pharmacy.
Okay.
Their pharmacy.
Like a management operation company.
Yeah,
which is
we're
awesome.
owners, but we also now we're actually switching to a management services because they're trying to change, just like everything in business. There's always shifting. So they want these federally qualified health centers or FQHCs or hospitals to actually own the entity, which is fine. So we just transition to a management service.
But how many outlets do you have?
So if you include dispensaries, we're north of 7. There are dispensaries that open and close, and we have a couple more on the horizon for the next couple of years. And our goal is to grow like significantly over the next 5 to 7 years.
All right. Now, in the world of functional medicine, this will be a really great lesson for our listeners. John actually and I did a recent show, and he talks all about how he's digging in on really digging in deep into his own health in 25. But
Nice.
if he were to show up and say, I'm going to do functional medicine, could you be the voice to teach us what that means to our audience?
Yeah.
Maybe not necessarily having to defend it so much, but more like, here's what I'm going to suggest you do. And it's these 5 things. This is functional medicine.
Yeah. So I would tell you, it starts with functional medicine. First of all, the name kind of embodies a lot, right? Because there's Chinese medicine, there's Ayurvedic medicine, there's integrative medicine, there's alternative medicine, there's a bunch of stuff under that scope. So my definition of it is being able to utilize every type of medicine to find the root cause of issues. Now, I come from a conventional medicine background, so I like to run lab tests, right? I want to see what's going on in the person's body. So whether it's blood labs, urine labs, saliva labs, or hair labs, I get a full picture of what's going on. Now, here's where it gets a little different from traditional or conventional medicine. Conventional medicine, you have ranges that put you out into sick range, right? So you see, typically you look at a lab, it's red, you're like, okay, what do I do? Physician looks at it, either tells you like, oh, it's nothing to worry about, we're going to watch it, or they tell you like, I'm going to prescribe something for you, right? We can actually, before you get to that, your body's actually having a conversation with you. It's telling you. So you run a lab and there are functional medicine ranges, right? So for instance, you can look at, let's say we were looking at thyroid. Your range could be anywhere from like 0.5 to 4.5. And past that, it gets the TSH, gets past it. You now are potentially might need medication. But somewhere in the middle, it started to kind of go out of whack. And that's your body having a conversation with you. It's telling you, hey, something is off, whether it's, a hormonal imbalance, it's stress on the body. And when I say stress, it doesn't necessarily mean mental stress. It could be mental stress. It could be oxidative stress, which is internal. It could be foods that you're eating, something you're bringing into your body, some type of inflammation. It could be mental health. It could be spiritual health. It could be physical health. You're working out too much. So it could be throwing off your hormones, right? And that could be throwing off your thyroid. It could be food, gluten, alcohol, dairy. These all can throw things off. But every single marker has a cause. When you start to see it fall out of whack, what ends up happening is if you have an experienced functional medicine practitioner, they're going to look at it and be like, okay, let's look at the whole picture, because the body is one system. You can't look at the body as like, oh, it's a heart, it's a brain, it's lungs. No, it's a functioning system. And so if one part of the system is out of whack, another part is going to start falling out of whack. So you start seeing, like, for instance, liver. If the liver isn't detoxed and there's no way for the liver to clear, because it's the filtration system of the body, right? You're going to start having elevation in maybe AST, ALT, enzymes, potentially cholesterol, and other things will start kind of going out of whack. Now, typically, physicians will write for, a medication. But if you actually detox your liver from all of these things and you cut out a lot of the things that are causing it to back up, a lot of these things will resolve on their own. And so you can follow that just by watching these labs and doing incremental tests, like quarterly tests and adjusting, quarterly tests and adjusting. And so you prevent yourself from getting sick. Now, there's always outliers and there's always a chance that people can get sick, but the data shows it. The data shows that if you do this, if you look back 50 years, people were not sick in the way they're sick now. So we have the technology, now we just have to put these things in place.
Hi, this is Melanie McCallan. Josh and I are just so grateful for the many investors who have already joined us at Accountable Equity. Accountable Equity is so much more than a capital group. It's really a community of accredited investors that want to learn and grow together. I just want to personally invite you, if you want to find out more about this type of investment and see if it's right for you and your family, please visit us at accountableequity.com.
Hey, it's Hal Elrod, author of The Miracle Morning, and you're listening to Capital Hacking. Enjoy.
That was fantastic. What a great explanation. So let's go back to distill it down a little bit more. Let's say somebody comes to you and wants to hire you as their functional practitioner. What is the first test that someone should go through?
So I put them through the whole array of tests. So I give them a blood test. I'll do a hair tissue mineral analysis to show minerals and heavy metals. I'll do a saliva test, which we're going to be able to see certain hormone levels, right? And I'll actually do a urine test, so I get to see how their gut health is. And if they have certain symptoms, we could potentially even give them a stool test, right, to see if there's any parasitic infections or bacterial infections. And then once I have the full picture, I come up with a roadmap for them, like where we're going to start and where we're going to end. And then what's going to happen is every quarter, I'm going to test one of these labs to show them that we're improving on their health. So by the end of the year, when we run everything, they're going to be like, oh man, like this, like everything should have shifted. And they're going to feel like dynamite. They're going to feel incredible after they start doing this, because they don't know what's actually going on. But when they start working with me, I know what's going on. My practitioners know what's going on. So we're able to bring them through that process.
And I love it. And I'm sure a dying question that a lot of people will ask, how much does something like this cost?
Yeah, so it depends on the package. Like some people don't need as much support. And so we have a yearly package, like a vitality program, where we do quarterly labs, and it could cost, anywhere from like $6,000 to $7,000 for the year. But then we have other other programs where there's a lot more support, and they could take them through like a condensed 6-month program, and that'll be a little bit more. And then there's a 4-month program where it's like, hey, we're going all in. It's weekly calls, daily accountability text. Like, we're going hard. These are people who really want to change their life. Like, they're like, I'm tired. I need somebody to be over my head. I need to get it done. And that's going to be a little bit more. So it really just depends. But listen, I always tell people, there is no value that you can put on your health. It is the most important thing in your life. Without it, you won't be here. And literally having, like, let's say, God forbid, let's not even go down the rabbit hole of someone passing away. just having limited energy. In a business setting, right? Imagine you don't have the energy to, like, one move or one decision could shift your business, and it could make you millions of dollars, right? So imagine having that energy to do that. And so that's really the goal.
This is awesome. As a matter of fact, I have one more question. I know we've run in a little short on time, and we want to make sure we explain a little more how to reach out in a minute.
Yeah.
But if I've heard you correctly, some of the magic of functional medicine is that early indicators or markers can show you where your body is asking you to make changes, or and then once you make the changes, you might get the result and you'll modify. So I heard quarterly tests are key. Then you come up with an adjustment, and then obviously you're seeking a roadmap. In the adjustments, what are the smorgasbord of options within adjustments?
Yeah.
I'm assuming it's diet first, exercise, components, vitamins.
Yeah.
Does it
So that's a
more?
great question, Josh. It is compiled of a bunch of stuff. So diet and exercise are obviously a part of it. Supplementation, minerals, vitamins is a part of it. Detoxing is a big part of it. Understanding gut dysbiosis, adjusting that, detoxing liver, parasitic detoxes, stress management, mindset shifts, right? Sometimes we activate our sympathetic nervous system, which throws our whole body out of whack, right? Just being able to, by creating stories in our head, right? From past impressions that have happened. So being able to adjust to the stress and sleep. People underestimate sleep. Like, sleep is where your body is fighting off infections, where it's kind of recharging. It's you're filling your battery pack. And then, there's the mitochondria, which nobody ever talks about, but that's literally the powerhouse of the cell. So imagine your phone has a battery, but it only fills up to 60%, versus when you first buy it, it's filling up to 100%, right? So we want to get it back up to 100%. There are some things that are limiting that from happening. And so we get that, once we understand all these things that are happening, we get that battery pack to fill up to 80, 90, 100%, and you feel incredible. So there's so many different modalities. And when we talk about detoxifying, not just the body, but even your world, there's a lot of things in your home and the people around you, and situations that we may not even be aware of. So there is a huge collaboration of things. And I think, people will sometimes go on Instagram or TikTok or whatever platform they use, and they see somebody like, I'm taking this, and they're like, oh, that's the end all be all. It doesn't work that way. The body is a rain barrel. It's a cup, and we fill it up, right? And just like we fill it up, we have to empty it out. And so there's different things that are filling it up, and that's what we work on.
That's awesome. Fantastic. How do our listeners connect with you, Adrian?
Dude, I appreciate you guys. So they can go on apexfunctionalhealth.com, or they can reach out to me directly at adrian@apexfunctionalhealth. And, we'd be more than happy to jump on a call and just have a conversation and see what's going on.
That's a good point, because you're in Florida, but not everybody's in Florida. So you're saying you do help people outside of Florida?
Absolutely. So what we do is we actually have a virtual practice. So I'm able to help anyone in the United States with anything that they need. And it's better suited that way, because one of the limitations that I found is when you have a brick and mortar, you can't touch as many people's lives as you want. So, like, I'm trying to expand all over. I want to be able to touch people everywhere.
And I know John gave us the closing bell, but I want to ask one last thing. I didn't hear you bring up things like stem cell and all that kind of treatments. Does that fall into the purview of what you care about, or is that different? That's a whole different type of focus.
It does, but I think there's levels, right? So that I would call that like a tier 3 and tier 4 when you're talking about hormone replacement, stem cells, peptides. There are modalities that you can use way before that, before you have to get to that side of things.
Okay.
So what I do is I say, let's exhaust these ways before we have to touch on those ways.
Yeah, time is the determining factor of your roadmap, which, in some ways sounds like the right thing, but it also sounds, people get frustrated because they want to get going, right? And they want to make changes. But I like your point. You got to test, adjust, test, adjust,
That's
test,
it.
adjust.
I don't like to shoot a dart in the middle of the night. I want to be able to see where I'm going. I come from that conventional medicine background, so I do value data. but at the same time, there are ways to prevent people from getting sick.
Awesome.
It's great.
Love it, guys.
Cheers,
Thank
bro.
you, guys.
Thank you.
Damn straight. We just got
Yeah,
to the
buddy.
end. We got to the end of another great show. And everyone listening right now, you're the family and friends. Thanks for staying till the end.
That was so fun. And hey, hit the like, hit subscribe. We're here to serve you guys. That's why we're doing this show. Josh is not paying me. I'm doing this off of my quote unquote sweat equity because we want to make a difference in your life. And then that ripple effect will continue to touch the world.
Hey, amen, brother. Please check us out on capitalhacking.com, all the social media threads. And yes, I know you've probably already sent this episode to one of your best friends. Thank you. We love you. Just go right into your iPhone, hit the plus symbol. We'll talk to you later. See you next week.
Share.